This is the You, Me, and BTC podcast.
Cryptocurrency decrypted.
Welcome to episode 48, and happy Thanksgiving. Today we're talking about whitelisting and blacklisting with Bitcoin addresses. Many people fear that address discrimination is wrong and could ruin Bitcoin. At first, we thought that's exactly where we would stand on the issue, but our discussion today leads us to believe a little differently. Although listing can be awful in some cases, it might actually be more acceptable than we thought. Tim, our ultimate freedom advocate, even comes close to suggesting that we encourage people to create and use whitelists and blacklists. Stick around to find out why. Your hosts are Tim Baker, John Stuart, and myself, Daniel Brown. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show today. This is the You, Me, and BTC podcast. This will be episode 48, I believe. Today is Monday, the 24th of November, and you guys should be hearing this for the first time in a few days. I guess it'll be Thursday, the 27th. That'll be Thanksgiving, actually, which is pretty cool. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. So, let's see. The first thing I want to mention today is a new website that I just finished up today. Check it out, youmeandbtc.com. Let us know what you think. If there's any bugs, anything that doesn't look right, anything that's not attractive, let us know. There's a contact page on there if you want to use that, or you can send us a tweet at youmeandbtc. Whatever, we just love feedback. Let us know what you think.
There aren't pictures of Tim on there, are there?
I was going to say about unattractive.
Yeah.
I don't think so, so I guess you're right. Maybe there's nothing unattractive on our
Hopefully
website.
we're good then. Another
Another thing I should mention before we get too far is that we're actually all in the same room together. This is only actually the second time that that's happened for an episode, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, for an episode, not...
Right. Yeah, we've known each other for ages, but I guess the we in this scenario is myself, Daniel Brown.
And Tim Baker. If you're feeling generous on Thanksgiving, I need a new laptop because I'm old, so you should definitely send me tips.
And John Stuart.
And I guess we might as well introduce our special guest in the studio today. We're here with our good buddy, Tyler Wagner.
Hey, everybody!
He doesn't normally sound like that.
No, I don't.
This actually isn't his first time on the You, Me, and BTC podcast. He was briefly on a live show before, so. Anyway, as Tim mentioned, he needs a new laptop, which reminded me that Black Friday is coming up again. So, I want to mention also that, well, I guess I just posted today an article. That's every Monday I do a bits and pieces article about Black Friday. So if you're interested, well, about Bitcoin Black Friday, which is a little different, I guess. Not super different. It's just focused on Bitcoin. So anyway, check that out if you're interested. Basically, the idea is I wouldn't be surprised if the price had a little bit of a crash on Bitcoin Black Friday. Because if everybody's spending Bitcoin, even if the stores love Bitcoin, they can't really keep it. They need dollars in order to restock. And they'll have to sell it, and that could knock the price down a little bit. I'm not super concerned long term. I mean, you know that. None of us are, but thought it'd be interesting to talk about that. So, check that out if you're interested, and check out the new website while you're at it, youmeandbtc.com. Send us some feedback. Alright, so the main thing that we thought about talking about today is I guess we wanted to describe whitelisting and blacklisting as they are related to Bitcoin. We'll just describe what they are and what the difference is and what they kind of mean for the whole community and things like that. So we're going to start there and see where we end up. Tim, do you want to just tell us what whitelisting and or blacklisting are?
I mean, as far as my understanding of it is, whitelisting and blacklisting addresses has to do with a regulatory authority kind of getting into Bitcoin and then labeling certain addresses as legitimate, and it's kind of a push to make things, it's a reaction against the whole that Bitcoin can be used for laundering money or for buying drugs or for buying child pornography or anything on the dark webs that are considered illegal. And so the whitelisted addresses, I think at least you'd pay to be like registered or something like that. And so I think maybe, or
Yeah.
it's like you'd be tied to your address. Like they would know it was Tim Baker, and that'd be if it was whitelisted, it'd be tagged like onto my address where I live, probably like my social security number, stuff like that, and really tied to someone. And the regulatory thing, if they got like the majority of people to do it, the idea would be that any addresses that don't conform to that would then have trouble getting transactions through.
Right.
Either it'd be really, really slow, or it'd be basically impossible to process the transaction.
Well, right. That's if you can get the miners on board. If you can get the miners to only approve whitelisted addresses, then you're right. That could be a huge problem to send a transaction from an address that isn't whitelisted. I think part of the thing might just be general consensus and kind of psychology is not just with the miners, but just in general. They might want people to be like, oh, that address isn't whitelisted, don't trust it, don't use it, don't send money to it, don't take money from it. So it's not just the miners. I mean, that is a big part of it, and some people support that, but it's also, I think, just in general trying to convince people that this is a good address, or this is a bad address, or something like that. So, and I will say also, I never even thought about the idea of paying to get on a whitelist, but you're probably right. I mean,
I was more meaning you'd have to pay for you'd pay for like the service of them doing all that.
right. No, you're right. I agreed. I think that would happen. And
I mean, I thought it kind of went along with the same idea as the bit license. I thought, well, that's just for sellers, but it's all the idea of just making things legitimate.
Right.
And controlling that.
Just like they do that for everything. You gotta have a license to drive, and you gotta pay for that, and you gotta renew it all the time. Gotta have a license to hunt. Gotta pay for that, and you gotta renew it every year. It's a huge joke, if you ask me. An expensive joke, too. So, the way blacklisting is slightly different is where you don't necessarily have to get on a whitelist or a good list or whatever to transact or do anything, but instead, they keep track and they find any address that does something bad, or that they just don't like, I guess. They blacklist it and they put it on a list. Everybody can see that supposedly this is a bad address, or they do bad things. You're not supposed to transact with them. So you guys can tell me if this makes sense, but I think in a really general sense, I guess blacklisting might be a little bit better than whitelisting. Because with blacklisting, at least the average guy can just do what he wants to do. As long as he doesn't do anything stupid or illegal, he can get by and do whatever he wants. And that's better than in the whitelisting scenario where every single person who wants to even use Bitcoin has to go through this process and do whatever the heck they have to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's less, let's make everyone get registered, and more like, well, for the few bad people the few what we consider bad people do stuff, then we'll blacklist there. But I thought they always went hand in hand.
I mean, in a way, because if there is a whitelist, you could say that anything that's not on the whitelist is on the blacklist. Maybe you could say that.
Yeah, it's kind of like innocent until proven guilty versus guilty until proven innocent.
Yeah. Okay, that's true. A whitelist will be guilty until proven innocent. The average guy cannot do anything until he's proven innocent and allowed to do things. That's actually a really good way of putting it. Whereas a blacklist, the average guy is innocent. He's okay to just send a little bit of money around, do whatever the heck he wants. Until he does something bad and they prove him guilty, then he's blacklisted and restricted and stuff like that. That's actually a really good way of putting it. But at the same time, I mean, either you can answer this, but I know, Tim, this is definitely your territory. Why are we not a huge fan of either of these things? Or maybe I'm wrong, but in general, I think we disagree, and I want to know why.
Well, I don't know. This is what I normally think about. I mean, it's mostly just because it's anything where you start to change the addresses, or you make one address above the other. That's where Bitcoin starts to lose why it's so good. I mean, obviously, even if whitelisting happened, it'd still be better than the current system we have, because it's still more open, but anything really that makes one address, like I said, above the other one or better than the other one or worse, or like it's going to get less treatment as long as it's not cheating anything, is not really something I'm for, no matter really what. Like,
well, let's say there was an address posted on a terrible website, child pornography or something. If there was an address there that was accepting Bitcoin in exchange for child pornography, you wouldn't want that blacklisted?
I wouldn't want it blacklisted from like an outside, like maybe like if it posts on like a media thing where like, okay, this address, and then you can kind of do what you want with that. I mean,
okay, let me ask you this. Let's ignore the lists. Let's say, I don't know, what do you want to buy? You want to buy a laptop, right? Well, I guess, no, I got a little backwards. Let's say you were selling something and you received money from an address that people said was on a child pornography website.
yeah.
Would you accept that money if somebody was trying to buy your old laptop or something like that?
Me personally, I mean, it's if I even know that that address is sent to me. If it's like a regular customer who comes back and someone tells me, hey, this person, if I could look into it and see enough people say, I mean, maybe not, but I think it's up to me.
Wait, can you try to rephrase that?
Okay.
I didn't follow.
Like, I probably wouldn't accept the money, but I think it's up to me. I don't think that someone accepting the money is like a terrible person, because it's not like although I guess you could argue that if he's buying, you say, a laptop from me, that I could say that I'm somehow helping him because his stuff is online, but I think it's more up to me to decide, and that very well may have to do with, well, if I do take this money, will someone hit me? Like, anonymous or something. Because, I mean, not that, I've always had like a weird thing about anonymous and stuff like that, or just like vigilantes in the real world. It's like, I can't disagree with them, like what they do, but it's not exactly what I would do, but I think that you're never going to get rid of those people. I don't know if how much this has to do with what you asked, but I guess for answering your question, I probably wouldn't take the money, but I don't think it's a judgment on your character. I don't think it's a fair way to judge your character if you do take the money.
Okay.
I should have said this earlier because it would have been more like controversial or whatever. Now that we've kind of gotten into this, I don't know, it won't sound as subversive, but I'm gonna say that I'm not against blacklisting. At least the problem is how you do it. So like, blacklisting could be done in different ways. And if it's done through like a rating system or something like that, where it's like, I mean, that's like keeping it peer to peer, I guess, if you do it through a rating system. So like, if somebody cheats somebody and then they're like, well, this address like ripped me off, and then it does it to like 10 more people, I don't have a problem with like people being able to know that at all. I think that's actually a good thing.
I think it's actually interesting because I sort of came to that conclusion while I was listening to Tim. I think
it's just how the blacklisting is being implemented.
Right. And voluntary listing, why should that be bad? If somebody wants to make a website of every address that they know is owned by a child pornography website, go ahead, make that list, let people know, so that when Tim gets money from this address, he can say, I probably don't want to accept that. Because he did say he probably wouldn't accept it, so I'm guessing he would want to know if it was from something like that. And so as long as it's voluntary, sure, why not? I mean, it's information. If I have information about this address, why not share that information? And even if you think about it, the minors can voluntarily reject transactions, right? And if they wanted to, a minor could say, hey, I really don't like that address, so why should I process that transaction for you? It would suck, but I don't see why that could possibly be wrong. The minors can do what they want. And if one minor decides that, it's not like all of them do. Somebody else can process that transaction for you. So,
and if all of them decide that, there's probably a good reason for it.
Good point. Definitely. And I would say one of the best ways to tell what is okay listing and what is bad listing is to see what the consequences are if you break the listing, rules or whatever. If the consequences are you have to wait a little bit longer for somebody else to voluntarily process your transaction, it's probably an okay whitelist or a blacklist. if you accept money from an address and you go to prison, that's some pretty sketchy listing. I mean, is that something you would agree with, Tim, that sending somebody to prison for accepting money, even if it was proven that, like, even if it was the same scenario, you know that money came from a bad place, you would not send them to prison, right? I mean, that's what you were saying earlier. You said you don't think it's a good way to judge people's character, right?
Yeah, just because I guess, maybe I shouldn't say it's a good judge of the character, because it actually is a decent judge of the character, but it's not something that I think that I should judge someone on, like, taking action over, as in, like, putting them in prison, or, because it does change a little bit, and this is where you can't have any rules, and this is part of my problem with, like, hard, fast laws, because stuff changes so much. Someone receives money from someone who's running a child porn site, and they're buying laptops or tea or something like that. That's different than someone who's providing
like you
server.
said, like a laptop that they can actually use to do it.
Yeah, but that's a little, I mean, you can kind of make that argument that's not the best, but, like, especially someone who's, like, was hosting the site.
Okay, yeah.
That's different, but that's not, like, you can't make a hard, fast rule out of that, because okay, like, well, if you're accepting it and it has to be this close to the actual crime or something, but I wouldn't say prison over that, no.
So, is there any form of punishment that you would think would be okay? Or is it just, I guess really the only thing it could be is just voluntarily, like we were saying, reject their transaction.
Are you meaning from the point of view of the person receiving the money, or us seeing that he receives money from them?
I mean, either way, I guess I guess what I really meant was us, if we see that somebody accepts money from a clearly bad place.
Yeah.
You don't see anything, right, that we really can or should do about that, right?
Not necessarily. I mean, the person is kind of being stupid, a little bit of an asshole just by doing that, because they know it's going to bother people, especially if it is really open and people are always looking at the transactions. They're going to be like, well, I'm accepting money from someone who does this. No matter if it's right or wrong, I have to take some precautions as to what people might do to me, no matter if what they're doing to me is legitimate or not. Like someone taking down his site or throwing a brick through his window. I'm not saying those things are right, but the person...
He should be trying to avoid those.
Yeah, and as a business owner, there's no real reason for him to, because is the guy really buying that much from him?
Right.
He can live without selling one laptop. But, I mean, it's up to him, I think. It's just how people are going to treat him after that he should probably be concerned with.
Okay, another question. Let's say there was a whitelist and or a blacklist. Do you think it should be people's responsibility to check that list and not accept money if it's on the blacklist? And let's assume that it's a fairly trustworthy blacklist. Like we were saying, on the blacklist they only put addresses that are actually on child pornography websites or whatever and accepting money like this. So let's say it's a fairly trustworthy blacklist. And if I'm a business owner, is it my responsibility to check that list every time I receive a transaction and to reject it or refund it every time I get money from one of those addresses?
I mean, if you're being a responsible business owner, yes, but again, it depends on when, too, I think, because, like, right now that's a little bit more work, like maybe in like 30 years if it's really grown and it's just like all the time.
Actually, I'm gonna say that's like almost a pointless question because it's not work at all. This is being processed online.
Yeah.
So the computer can check it automatically. You don't have to check. You can just set up your system so that it scans the list before it accepts anything.
Right. I agree to an extent, but
that's like a little bit much just
now. Because, I mean, like I was saying, I spent the last few days just doing a ton of tweaks on our new website, and that took a while. I mean, a few hours for this or that. It wasn't super difficult, but it is work. Whereas I think Tim was saying in the future,
would be more...
You sign up, you copy and paste an access key or something, and you're done.
Or you get like a warning when the person does pay you, or has paid you, or is trying to pay you. Because even then you have to have something like stop someone from paying you, because if you just send the money back, yeah, that can be seen, but what happens if, like, your competitor just runs and you do that? And you're like, but I can send it back. But I don't know. I think that's one of the things, like...
I guess I was talking about more, like, bigger companies.
Yeah, that's
Because
definitely true.
for, like, somebody, I don't know, just like Target or Home Depot or Walmart or something like, I picked Target and Home Depot because they got hacked recently. But yeah, the reason them getting hacked is important is because they have tons of information about their clients. And for a company like that to just not accept payments from a blacklisted thing would just be like, they just call up their IT department and say, hey, set this up so that it doesn't let things through. And that's like one afternoon of work.
Yeah, exactly.
For a company like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I was saying, like, it's hard because you make these big rules that are then easy for, like, a bigger company to follow, but if there's some guy who's, like, just barely understands Bitcoin and he's kind of running this as a small business and then he doesn't know why he's all of a sudden getting all these nasty emails and having people tell him he's a horrible person and they're gonna shut down his business or that he's getting death threats, he's probably gonna get those. I'm just saying, I don't think that's the best way to handle the situation.
The thing is, I don't think people would freak out about it that much because I don't think people would expect businesses like that to be checking the lists all the time. And what I think would more likely be the case is that, like, if people see that he's accepting money from somebody, they're like, hey, this guy is blacklisted, like, you should stop accepting money from him. And then, from then on, if he doesn't, then people might get mad.
Right.
But I think for smaller businesses, people would probably give them the benefit of the doubt on that.
Another tough thing is just that even if you did believe in whitelisting and blacklisting, even if they worked flawlessly and even if all the miners obeyed the whitelists and the blacklists, they can just make a new address, right? I guess that's actually exactly why people would argue for a whitelist instead of a blacklist, so that if a terrible person was just making more addresses every single time, well, they wouldn't be able to get them on the whitelist, and they wouldn't be able to use those addresses that they just keep creating. So, actually, I guess if it was an actual whitelist scenario and it worked flawlessly, then what I was about to say is irrelevant. If it was a blacklist scenario and it worked flawlessly, well, it wouldn't really mean anything because these people could just make more addresses and they wouldn't...
Well, that's the thing, is why people are using the same address over and over again. Although I guess that's... Yeah, I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't just change an address. That's like simple stuff for any kind of online stuff. Like, not even the more like shady, illegal stuff with Bitcoin. Like, even like the legal stuff, they say like change your addresses.
Right. Well, yeah, definitely clarify that. Tim's not trying to give advice.
Yeah, I'm not trying to give advice for all you people to go out and submit child porn, but anyone just change your addresses because it's not the best thing to use those.
General advice, yeah, exactly, because it helps you stay more anonymous, and that's a good thing as long as you're not doing terrible stuff.
I don't know. Part of this whole thing is that it's not like anonymity or the ability to send money does not become bad just because of what the person's doing. Anonymity is not good when you're doing something that I agree with versus whenever your anonymity is not good whenever you're just buying a pack of socks or I don't have a problem with people buying drugs. If you're just buying drugs, your anonymity is not just good then. It's not good or bad, I guess. You could say it's still, I still like the anonymity, I guess even in the situation where the person is using it to buy child porn, because you can't take one without the other. Can't be like, well, this is bad and this is good. You either have to have anonymity or have everybody be open.
Everybody has to be anonymous.
Yes, everyone has to be part of Operation Anonymous. And apparently, I thought I retweeted, I think, but apparently a bunch of those sites were empty. They got taken down.
Yeah, actually,
they're ghost sites or just made up ones.
Well, a bunch of them were directed to the same pages. And what I read was that, I don't know that this is true, but I read that it wasn't that they actually cracked anything with Tor. It was that they found information about these people who had the sites from other things, and that's why all the domains are pointing to the same things, because they got it through the people, not through Tor.
So just then, to clarify for anybody listening, this is, I think just 2 or 3 episodes ago, we talked about a bunch of black market websites that were taken down. The episode is called White Thursday, if you want to look it up. But anyway, well, yeah, we had a whole debate and a lot of speculation about how they found these people, and at the time, the article we were reading said something like 400 or 500 sites were taken down. but I guess now we're saying that a lot of them point into the same place. And
Yeah, I think
like
it was
that.
just domains, not actual sites. I don't really remember exactly. And like I was saying, the thing about them getting more of these people's information by other means, I'm not sure if that's 100% true, because I've seen both sides of it still, and I haven't looked anything up in the last week or so, so I don't
Right.
know.
You're listening to the You, Me, and BTC podcast. We need your help. First of all, we'd love it if you could check out our website, youmeandbtc.com. There you can find donation addresses for every single article and episode, and we'd love it if you could make use of those. We could also use some fans and followers, so if you're willing, please visit Facebook or Twitter.com/youmeandbtc. Lastly, remember to subscribe to the show. You can do that on iTunes or sign up on our website to receive email updates. Thanks for your support.
Let me ask another thing. I know I just keep asking questions, and I got another one that's a little different. We've somewhat decided that it's okay to have a voluntary list. That it's okay to have something that people just do on their own volition, and as long as you aren't forcing people to do certain things, maybe it's okay. Would you encourage that? Do you think we should tell people to be developing this sort of technology and try to find ways to figure out what are good addresses and bad addresses, and should we be telling people to make these lists and then to develop the technology to, like we were talking earlier, when you accept a transaction, should there be technology where it just automatically gets checked against these lists?
I think it'd be good to have available, but not necessarily imposed upon. Like it's available for those who would want it.
Yeah, that'd be the voluntary part, wouldn't it?
Yeah. But what I mean is it something that kind of morally or whatever, should people be going for this and developing it just now? Should we be encouraging people to make it happen? Or is it not that big a deal?
I don't think it's that big of a deal to call it an issue of morality.
I think unless you can come up with reasons why it would be bad, it should be encouraged. Not that it should be like our primary focus, but I think it should be encouraged unless you can come up with any reasons why it's bad that I'm maybe not thinking of.
Speaking of things that we don't think of, if anybody listening has any thoughts or ideas, leave a comment or a tweet or whatever and tell us what we didn't think of. So that's a little bit of wind. I'm sure there's been lots of background noise in this for everybody to enjoy.
I don't think it's a big enough problem to be pushing for this that much. Like, they want to make like it's this big issue, but
Okay.
I'm sure there's a lot more money there's a lot more money spent on drugs with Bitcoin than there's in child pornography. And even the stuff spent on drugs is like how much percent of the entire thing. I get that you want to change that, but that's a good thing.
Well, no, I'm not saying that necessarily. I'm asking the question.
No, I'm not saying. I'm saying when I say you, which
Okay.
I need to explain that more.
And I also,
I understand wanting to change that, but at the same time, we see it happen, but it's not that much.
right, which in a general sense I agree with, but I also think it's worth mentioning, and it's something I've kind of been thinking about a lot recently, how are you sure that there's less money spent on things like child pornography than on just drugs or whatever? Because the whole idea is that this really bad stuff happens really underground. So how can we really know? I don't think we can.
I'm just imagining it does, just like compared to how much is done in dollars. There's more, and maybe. I know that and there's probably Bitcoin used for this too, but just like human trafficking, that gets up to close, but still, drug market's the biggest thing in the world, basically.
Yeah, but I
It's
mean,
like
again,
like the amount of people who are going to go online and buy a eighth of weed or even the people who go online and buy like meth, which I don't really see the point of, because at that point you're addicted to it. Why are you having it shipped to your house? But I imagine maybe it's not, but I imagine there's more people who are going to buy drugs online than are going to use it to pay for child pornography. That's less of a thing, I guess, is what I'm saying.
You're just gonna say the proportions, like, in the whole world,
Yeah, I mean,
with all currencies, are
Yeah.
gonna be the same as just within Bitcoin, or at least similar.
Yeah. I mean, that's not necessarily true, but I just imagine that's how it's going to be. And this may be getting, like, too, not technical about it, but the videos, so, I mean, I have no idea how much stuff costs. I just can't, like, a physical object versus data transferred to your computer or hosted on a website, I don't know how much that's going to cost compared to a physical object.
Okay, so you're talking about...
Like, how expensive, this is for being, like, really nitpicky.
So you're saying a lower volume of money goes through something like child pornography because it's easier to transfer?
I would think, one, because there's less people, and two, because it's just video. You're not transporting any physical good, you're just
Right.
paying to
Okay.
watch
Well, the
a
thing
video.
is-
They might charge a lot of money for that, I have no idea, though.
Well, yeah, because you have to count in the risk factor, because I'm sure if, like, marijuana was legal everywhere, it would be cheap as crap to, like, produce.
It's already cheap in Colorado.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, if it was legal the world over, it's cheap as crap to grow plants.
Yeah.
Like, plants don't cost anything.
So then I guess, just to make the point here, then you're saying it would be good technology to be able to have these lists and cross-check, but you think that the problem, we don't know this for sure, but you think the problem is small enough at the moment that it's not like we should be spending every waking moment, like every second, trying to make this happen. Yes, it should come eventually. Yes, people should be working on it, but not like tomorrow we gotta have this, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's as big of an issue as some people make it out to be. Partly because I don't have a problem with much of what people make it an issue about, but even the stuff I do have a problem with, I don't think it's bad. I don't like it. I'm not saying it's good, but I think it's not as big of a thing as we're made out to believe.
This might be going a little bit too deep, but, like, some people would consider drugs, like, in the same categories, like child pornography or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Well,
is more
so what I'm saying is, like, how, I don't know, where do you think we can draw lines on this kind of stuff? That's another one of the big issues with it.
What do you mean?
Well, you're saying it shouldn't be a huge issue because,
From my
That-
point,
yeah, from your point of view, people want to do it more because of things that you're okay with than things that you're not okay with. But
Yeah.
what about all the people who aren't okay with things that you are okay with? So, like, who comes up with the line on this?
I mean, I don't care. Because, I mean, I'm drawing the line because one is trading objects and another is treating children like objects. So that's my defense. But I was answering personally Daniel asking me the question.
Right. I think that's kind of the idea of voluntarism, is he draws the line where he thinks the line should be drawn.
I mean, I can't force that on someone else. Although, I mean, then someone could say, well, children are object. You could make an argument, but it doesn't mean it holds up. So, I mean, you can say, where do you draw the line for anything because it's relative, but, and again, even if it is, like, if you have a problem with people buying drugs too, that's still not that big of a, I mean, it's sizable, like it registers, but how much of a percent of the Bitcoin transactions are, they've estimated for like Silk Road and stuff like that? How much is it? It's in the
1 or 2%.
single digits, I thought. Yeah, so it's still not that big. I mean, there's a lot more that you'd be concerned with, but, I mean, if you really want to do that, go ahead. I'm going to still support projects like Dark Wallet and stuff like that because I want that. You want something else, it's fine. I'll just try to be more anonymous, I guess. Really just depends on what you, like, if you just want Bitcoin as a transaction, that's fine, but I'd rather it be something where it's my money and I don't have to tell you where I'm spending it. I can kind of...
Maybe, I guess, an answer to the problem I'm talking about is if they have this blacklist, maybe things can be blacklisted under different categories. So you can look and see, well, I don't have a problem with that, so I'll accept this address, but I have a problem with this, so I won't accept any of these addresses. And then somebody looks at you and says, well, he doesn't have a problem with this, but I do, so I'm not going to accept stuff from him. Or yeah.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool, and I think it's the same idea. As long as it was voluntary and as long as people could choose which to trust or not to trust and things like that. I think that makes pretty good sense and will be helpful to people. I guess before we wrap up, not super related, but just one thing that I started to say earlier, I really like the phrase "I imagine," which is what Tim was kind of trying to say. That's how I would imagine it would be. I like that phrase because, I don't know, it just kind of makes sense because it's like saying, I don't know this for sure, but just in my head, the way things seem to be, that's the way I imagine it.
Thanksgiving! Eat lots of tryptophan.
Have fun shopping, spend some Bitcoin.
Yeah, spend some Bitcoin, go to all your favorite sites.
Yeah. This is a good time to encourage people to actually spend Bitcoin instead of hoarding it. I mean, I think that's less of a problem than it has been, but it's still a problem.
Yeah,
go out and spend Bitcoin.
I've been hoarding for a while, and I've started spending. And I'm going to buy that laptop, so I
No,
have to break into some of my stash.
you could leave a tip, help Tim get his laptop.
Yeah, 'tis the season.
Actually, one last somewhat important thing that we should mention. Our 52nd episode is scheduled to go out on Thursday on Christmas, which is pretty crazy. Just a coincidence, but that's what it is right now. The 52nd...
In case you're missing the significance of 52,
Yeah.
there are 52 weeks in a year.
Yeah, so that's our 1 year episode. So we are right now in the brainstorming phase for a 12 days of YMB Christmas promotion, exciting extravaganza. I don't know, something like that.
Well, technically the 52nd is actually the last episode in the year.
But it'll mean we've
So the
completed.
53rd is the new year, yeah. But it's a way to celebrate the end of a year, yeah.
Right.
And we go with Christmas, and the next Thursday is New Year's Day. So
It'll be crazy, I know.
It's perfect.
So I guess all I have to say right now is just that keep an eye out for that. It'll probably be just that we'll release something special every day for the 12 days up until our 1 year episode. But we're still brainstorming, so if you have any ideas, maybe any clips we could get, maybe any guests we could have, or if you have a clip of something that you want us to air, there's going to be 12 days of excitement. So if you have any ideas at all, let us know. Thanks for listening. Happy Thanksgiving. Have a good Christmas and whatever else.
Thanks for listening to episode 48. All of the music in today's show was from John Stuart. We'll see you next Thursday.